pull her from the project, quietly. I froze in the hallway, the words slicing through the chatter from the open office. I knew that voice. It was Ethan, our head of strategy. He stood in the glass conference room with the VP of operations, their heads bent together like conspirators. The project they were talking about wasn't just any project. It was mine. I'd been building it for 8 months, often sleeping at my desk, eating vending machine dinners, watching my apartment plants die while I pushed our supply chain AI prototype from fragile code into a working, scalable system. And now, before we'd even hit launch, they were talking about removing me, like I was just a temp who'd overstayed my welcome. I stayed in the hallway, unseen, clutching the coffee I'd been on my way to deliver to Ethan himself. My fingers itched to storm in and demand answers, but I didn't, not yet, because the real story of this project wasn't written in that room. It was sitting on my encrypted drive at home. The whispers had started 2 weeks earlier. My Jira tickets reassigned without warning. Meetings suddenly rescheduled without my invite. And the strangest thing, Ethan stopped asking for direct updates. Instead, junior analysts I'd trained were presenting my work like it was theirs. Every little shift could have been explained away, miscommunication, bad calendar sync. But then I noticed the changes to the repo. My commits were disappearing, replaced with older code versions that conveniently broke features I'd built. It wasn't just sabotage, it was a setup. They wanted the board to think my system was unstable, that I'd been overpromising. That way, when they replaced me, they could fix it and take the credit. I'd seen it before in other companies, but never this close, never aimed at me. Ethan wasn't just a colleague. 2 years ago, he was the one who brought me in from a smaller startup, telling me I was wasted there, and that here, I'd finally get the resources to do my work right. He'd championed me in meetings, defended me when executives pushed for quick hacks. I trusted him, which is why it felt like my lungs had collapsed when I realized the code removal wasn't random. The commit history was being altered from his admin account, and yet I still didn't confront him, because you don't walk into a storm empty-handed. You wait until you can turn the wind in your favor. I spent that weekend combing through our backups. The sabotage was clumsy in places, files deleted but not scrubbed from the company's cloud archive. That was my first lead. But the real breakthrough came when I found a private Slack channel I wasn't supposed to have access to. Someone had messed up the permissions. Inside were weeks of messages. Ethan feeding the VP of operations lines about my unrealistic projections, mocking my late nights, even hinting that I was emotionally volatile. But one message stopped me cold, a spreadsheet attachment, and in that sheet, numbers that didn't belong. Vendor payments for hardware testing to a company I'd never heard of. Payments signed off by the VP, routed through Ethan's department. It was fraud. Not flashy, headline-grabbing fraud, but the kind that bleeds a company dry quietly over years. Fake vendors, overbilled contracts, double charges for equipment that never existed. And my project was the perfect scapegoat. If the AI rollout failed due to my mistakes, no one would look too hard at the budget line items buried inside it. They'd replace me, stabilize the project, and those payments would keep flowing without question. I sat there at 2 a.m., staring at the sheet on my monitor, my apartment silent except for the hum of my fridge. I wasn't just being pushed out, I was being erased to protect a theft big enough to sink the company. My first instinct was to go to HR. Then I remembered HR worked for the same executives approving those invoices. Going to them without leverage would be career suicide. No, if I was going to take this on, I had to build something undeniable, evidence that couldn't be buried in a drawer. So I started downloading every approval email, every invoice, every contract linked to the fake vendor. I mapped the money flow like an infection spreading through a body. The deeper I went, the more names appeared, people I'd never suspected. Even the CFO had initialed one of the larger payments. That's when I realized this wasn't a small conspiracy. This was the leadership. I looped in the only person I still trusted, Nadia from compliance. She didn't flinch when I showed her the files. "This is enough to burn them," she said quietly, her eyes scanning the numbers. But she warned me, "If they smell what you're doing, they'll crush you before you finish. We need a release plan." So we built one, a staggered drop of information to multiple sources. One to the board's audit committee, one to an investigative journalist Nadia knew from her previous job, and one to the financial regulator. The goal wasn't just to expose them, it was to hit them so fast they couldn't regroup. I kept working like nothing was wrong. I smiled in stand-ups, nodded at Ethan's fake compliments, pushed the AI demo forward as if my career wasn't dangling over a cliff. But every night, I loaded more into the leak folder. Nadia and I used burner accounts, encrypted messaging, even a dead-drop USB at a library. It felt surreal, writing code by day, dismantling a fraud ring by night. The pressure built in my chest like a storm I couldn't release. The trigger came faster than I expected. A transition meeting popped up on my calendar with no explanation. Inside, Ethan sat at the head of the table, the VP beside him. "We've decided to shift your role," he began, sliding a folder across to me. I opened it to see my new title, Advisor, AI Integration. A glorified intern. No team, no project ownership, no mention of the platform I'd built. I looked at him, and for the first time, I smiled, because the leak was scheduled for that evening. By 7 p.m., the first email hit the audit committee. 20 minutes later, the journalist's story went live, complete with screenshots of invoices, approval chains, and Slack messages. The regulator's notice followed, an official inquiry into vendor payments. By midnight, my phone was buzzing with texts from colleagues. "What's happening? Is this about the platform?" And then from Ethan himself, "We need to talk." I didn't reply. The fallout was instant. Trading on our parent company's stock was halted. The CFO resigned for personal reasons within 48 hours. The VP of operations went on leave and never came back. Ethan stopped coming into the office entirely. My demotion was quietly reversed, but I didn't take the bait. They wanted me to stay so they could say they'd resolved the issue internally. I wasn't interested. Nadia and I met for coffee 3 days later. She slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside, an offer letter. A rival firm had read the coverage and wanted me to lead their AI division. More resources, better pay, a contract clause guaranteeing full project ownership. "You're free," Nadia said, and for the first time in weeks, I believed it. I handed in my resignation without ceremony. No farewell email, no cake. I left my badge on Ethan's empty desk. As I walked out, I passed the glass conference room where it had all started. Different people sat there now, faces drawn, paper scattered. The glow from the screens looked the same, but the air was heavy. The story didn't end there. The regulator's investigation widened, pulling in other vendors, other contracts. Quietly, the company bled millions in legal fees and settlements. I kept my distance, watching the headlines from my new office. Every so often, I'd get a message from someone still there. Another exec gone, another department gutted. Sometimes I think about that morning in the hallway, coffee in hand, invisible to the people plotting my removal. If I'd stepped in, confronted Ethan then, I would have been walked out within hours. Instead, I walked out on my own terms, my work intact, their scheme in ashes. They tried to erase me, but in the end, I erased them.